from the 13 chambers.
I'm here to introduce a new chilling series. Strangely enough, this type of story has been neglected by television.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I direct your attention to something quite extraordinary?
The unexplained or the mysterious will not try to explain the how or the why.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm over here sitting here with a smile on my face because we're finally here. First off, welcome, for real. This is the first official episode of 13 Chambers, and I just want to say I am hyped. I've been sitting on this idea for a minute, digging through history, conspiracy, crime, mystery, and now we're here, together, you and me, locked in, no turning back. I'm Bambu. I'm your host and narrator. Some of the stories we're going to get into, they're funny. I mean, darkly funny. Like, what the hell is wrong with people funny? And others, they're straight up disturbing, unsettling. The shit that makes your stomach twist. And some episodes, well, they're both. But this one, today's story, it ain't funny. It ain't quirky. It's just fucked up. And now that we got that out of the way, let's open up our first chamber. All right, we're in Oakville, Washington. It's 1994. Picture a small-ass town in the middle of nowhere. I mean, real talk. You'd miss it if you blinked on the highway. The population, maybe 600 at the time. I'm talking one school, one gas station. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody. And if they don't know you, they damn sure know your people. Out there, it's quiet. Trees for miles, pine needles lining the roads. Fog rolls in like it's got a job to do. And you can hear the wind whispering through the evergreens like it's telling secrets you're not supposed to hear. Oakville sits in Grays Harbor County, deep in the Pacific Northwest, about halfway between the coast and Olympia, surrounded by thick forests and farmland, not too far from the Chehalis River, and overhead, just a whole lot of gray sky. And then there's the military. See, back in the day, there were whispers, talks of nearby training exercises, planes flying low, weird sounds at night. Some folks said they saw black helicopters overhead. Could have been training drills, could have been paranoia. Depends on who you ask. But let me be clear, Oakville wasn't paranoid by nature. These were regular people, working class folks. Loggers, fishermen, teachers, moms and dads raising kids. The kind of place where your business was everybody's business, but people still had your back when shit hit the fan. So imagine waking up one morning in a place like that where nothing ever happens, and you look outside and it's raining. Except, it's not rain. It's something else, something thicker, and it's falling in globs, soft, clear jelly. It hits your windshield, your front porch, your dog's back, and it sticks. It don't smell like anything. It don't taste like anything. And yes, people tasted it, and no one has ever seen anything like it. That was August 7th, 1994, and it will be just the beginning. If you're anything like me, and I know some of y'all are, you're probably Googling this shit right now just to make sure I'm not making it up. Like Oakville Blobs, 1994 or some shit. But go ahead, actually. I'll wait. Just type Oakville Blobs into Google and look at that first image result. Now tell me that don't look like something out of a low-budget sci-fi flick from the 80s. You can't make this shit up. So let's break it down. All right, so it's August 7th, 1994, early morning around 3 a.m. It starts raining over Oakville, but it's not rain. It's this gelatinous, semi-transparent gunk. Imagine something between hail and jello, but without the color. And it's about the size of rice grains or like a tapioca pearl. And it's just falling. And it covers everything. Car windshields, lawns, porch steps, the tops of mailboxes. And this wasn't just some freak 10-minute drizzle. This shit came down 6 different times over the span of 3 weeks. 6 different times. You hear that? That's just crazy. Now, enter Sunny Bartcliff. Her name comes up every time you research this story because she's the one who actually tried to get answers. She's sort of like the main character of this episode, actually. See, Sunny Bartcliff wasn't a scientist, wasn't a journalist, she wasn't an activist or some government agent. She was just a regular woman living in Oakville at the time, deep in that quiet, small-town life. But when those blobs started falling from the sky and people around her started getting sick, including her own mother, Sunny wasn't just about to sit back and wait for someone else to figure it out. She became the town's unofficial investigator, and it's because of Sunny that we even have any kind of documented trail on this. Without her, this whole event might have just stayed a weird local rumor. Her mother gets violently ill after coming in contact with the blobs. Dizzy, nauseous, struggling to breathe. Their family cat dies not long after the blobs land on their property. And something just felt off, and Sunny starts collecting samples. Here's Dottie Hearn, Sunny's mother, explaining what she saw.
It looked like hail laying on top of the wood box and everywhere else. So I just went over and I touched it, and it wasn't hail. It was a gelatinous-like material.
And here's Sunny Bartcliff, in her own words, explaining her mother's symptoms.
She was cold, drenched with perspiration, pale. My mom had been vomiting. She had extreme vertigo. She complained that she had difficulty with her vision. Her vision was blurring.
They later diagnosed Dottie with a severe ear infection. That sounds weird to me. So Sunny puts the little gelatinous droplets in a little Tupperware container and drives them to the local hospital. And she's like, hey, something fell from the sky and everyone's getting sick. What is this stuff? And they tested it. And this is crazy. Now this is where it gets even weirder. The lab tech tells her it's biological. It's made up of cells. But here's the kicker. These cells don't have nuclei, which means they look like human white blood cells, but they can't be. Because without a nucleus, white blood cells can't function. They can't even exist. So what the hell are they? Another lab tech says they found 2 types of bacteria, one of which typically is found in the human digestive tract, like in your gut, which leads to more questions like, is this waste? Is this human waste? Was this dumped from an airplane? And if it was, why is it clear? And why isn't the waste dyed blue and frozen like it usually is before being dumped from an airline toilet? And then you've got a third lab, a state lab at that. And they say, nah, this ain't biological at all. They claim it's inert, harmless, probably nothing. So wait a second. Hold on. Let me get this straight. Got one lab says it's full of cells. Another says it's bacteria from inside of a human body. And the third one says nothing to see here, folks. How do you get 3 completely different answers to the same question? What were these people breathing in? What the hell were they touching? And then the blobs just stopped falling. Just like that. After 3 weeks, no more gelatinous rain, no more blobs, no answers. And if you're thinking, well, damn, maybe someone in the government looked into this, we're going to get into that. And spoiler alert, nobody wanted to talk. Here's Mike McDowell, a microbiologist from the Washington State Department of Health, explaining what he found.
It was very uniform. There was no structure that we could see visibly or with a microscope. I set it up on various microbiological media and attempted to isolate bacteria.
So let's tally this up. 6 rainfalls of gelatin, dozens of people got sick, pets and livestock dead, blobs tested as maybe human in origin, maybe not, and to this day, no official explanation. Tell me that don't make your skin itch just a little. And all right, before we move on, I want to take a quick intermission, just me and you for a second, because if you're listening to this and thinking, yo, this sounds like some tinfoil hat, late night radio type stuff, I feel you. No, I really do. And let me be clear, I'm not a conspiracy guy. I didn't grow up reading David Icke or building bunkers or screaming about lizard people. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But something shifted in the last few years. We've all lived through COVID. We saw what happened when people even suggested that the virus might have leaked from a lab. Folks got banned from platforms, labeled as dangerous and racist. Some even lost jobs or got doxxed just for asking questions. And now, turns out as of January 2025, according to the CIA, that lab leak theory is the most likely cause of COVID. This is not fringe, not imaginary. The idea that our government could have purposely released these blobs is a theory that needs to be taken seriously. This used to be just considered crazy, but people have changed. I have changed. And it makes you wonder, what else have we been told is too ridiculous to believe until it isn't? See, back in 1994, when the Oakville Blobs fell, you couldn't even entertain a story like this unless you were reading underground forums about Bigfoot or the New World Order in your basement. People would have laughed you out the room. But now, you bring this up at a bar or in a group chat, and at least half the room is like, yo, this is not even the weirdest thing I've heard all this week. That's why I'm doing this show, because some of these crazy stories, they might just deserve a second look. All right, let's keep going. All right, let me introduce you to our second main character in this mystery. It's David Lacey, a local police officer, small town cop doing late night rounds with a buddy in the passenger seat. You know, a civilian ride along type of situation. Now, I just want you to think about this for a moment, what kind of quaint town this must be in order for a cop to allow a buddy just come on patrol. You know, I'm from New York City, all right, and there's no way the NYPD would just allow a cop to let his homeboy ride around with him late at night in his cruiser. You know, I just want you to think about that for a moment to stress how small this town is. Well, anyway, back to the story. It's 3 a.m. They're cruising the back roads of Oakville when rain starts coming down. But just like Sonny saw, this ain't no regular rain. According to Lacey, as soon as his wipers hit the stuff, they smear. And not clear water. It was like trying to wipe jelly off of glass. He actually had to pull over and use gloves to clear his windshield. Listen, he'll tell you himself.
It's on the window there. I don't know. I kind of build it up. Is that inside the car?
We turned our windshield wipers on, and it just started smearing to the point where we could almost not see. And we both looked at each other and we said, you know, geez, this isn't right. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, basically, and where did this come from?
And here's the part that really bugs me. Lacey got sick too. Shortness of breath, nausea, flu-like symptoms that stuck with him for weeks. So let's ask the big question. What the hell was it? But to get to that, we have to break down the theories. Let's start with military testing. This is the one that got the locals whispering the loudest. Because around the time of the blobs, people in Oakville were reporting increased military aircraft overhead. Unmarked jets, strange flight paths, constant noise. The military said they were doing bombing runs 20 miles offshore. And here's where it gets wild. Some residents believe those bombs were blowing up jellyfish blooms. And that's what rained down over Oakville. Now let's pause right there. why the hell would you be bombing jellyfish? And why would that cause fully intact, rice-sized gelatin chunks to fall days later so far inland? Another theory, biological testing. Some kind of experimental agent being deployed, maybe even accidentally. Could Oakville have been a test site without knowing it? If you're a military scientist and you want to see how a compound spreads in a remote contained population, a town like Oakville makes perfect sense. But of course, there's no official admission, no paper trail, just stories and sick people.
We had a significant amount of military aircraft flying over the home prior to this happening.
Every day almost, slow-flying bombers, helicopters, all black in color. And we kind of thought maybe it might have come from them.
They let off things in the air all the time here. Testing, there's testing done all over the place. There's a lot of places you can't go into.
Okay, so let's go on to the next one, this jellyfish theory, right? Let's just entertain this for a second. The idea that military bombs hit massive jellyfish clusters off the coast, which sent bits of them into the atmosphere, and those bits eventually rained down over Oakville. On paper, it might seem semi-believable, but scientists quickly shut that shit down. See, like, jellyfish are soft-bodied creatures. They don't survive explosive trauma and then float 20 miles inland through the air like they're on some Willy Wonka-inspired acid trip. That's just not how physics work or biology or any of that. Also, lab tests never confirmed any type of marine DNA in those blobs. Just weird bacteria and those mysterious nuclei-free cells. So, like, nice try with that, but I'm not buying it.
Now, if that were jellyfish floating around up there for that long, they would have smelled to high heaven.
Then we got the third one. This is the airplane waste to blue ice theory. Now, here's a theory that actually came up a lot, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it. People thought the blobs might be frozen airplane toilet waste, what's called blue ice in the industry. But here's the thing. Matter of fact, let Sonny tell it.
The initial speculation was that it might have been human waste from an airliner. However, the FAA ruled that out because under the regulations, human waste is dyed blue. The substance was not blue. It was crystal clear in color.
And multiple labs said it wasn't chemical waste. It didn't match the chemical profile of standard blue ice. And again, why would it fall 6 times over 3 weeks, always in the same general area? That's not an accident. That's a pattern. So we can probably flush that theory as well. And then here's the last one, and this is the one that our government probably wants us to believe. It's the hoax by local collusion. This one always creeps in when any story like this gets attention. Was the Oakville incident an elaborate hoax? Did a few townsfolk spread this to get famous? Maybe even to get on like Unsolved Mysteries? It's easy to be skeptical, I get it. But let's just keep it real. Who would poison their own neighbors, kill their pets and livestock, and get themselves sick just to get on syndicated television? And how would they even make that much goo? Like, how do you stage 6 blob falls over nearly a month? Look, I'm not saying it was aliens, but if it was, wouldn't this be like the perfect way to test their waters? Quiet town, small test, watch and see who notices? No, I'm just getting carried away. All right, let's just get back to being serious for a second. But this is how ridiculous some of this shit sounds sometimes. All right, so here we are. Was it military, marine life, airplane shit? Was it a hoax? Or something we haven't even thought of yet? Well, whatever it was, it came, it hit, and it vanished. And it left more questions than answers. But let's dig deeper into this rabbit hole. I'm not satisfied.
I got sick, my wife got sick, my daughter, everybody that lived here got sick.
Everybody in the whole town came down with like a flu, only it was a really hard flu. It didn't last like 7 days, it lasted like 7 weeks to 2 or 3 months.
See, Here's the part of the story that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Everybody wants to talk about the blobs, what they were, where they came from, and that's cool. But what about the people? Like, what about the ones who breathed that shit in, touched it, walked outside like it was a normal day, and ended up in the ER that night? Let's talk about the fallout. The first to fall ill was Dottie Hearn. That's Sonny Barcliff's mother, of course. She collapsed in her house, dehydrated, disoriented, and burning with fever. Her blood pressure bottomed out. She could barely stand. And like I mentioned earlier, they later diagnosed her with a severe inner ear infection. But, like, let's be honest. You ever heard of rain causing a fucking ear infection? Because I haven't. And listen, she wasn't alone. Dozens of people across Oakville reported the same symptoms: fatigue, shortness of breath, nausea, memory loss, vertigo, rashes. Some folks were down for weeks, and others never fully recovered. And we're talking about long-term impact, and not a single federal agency ever offered an explanation. We live in a country that shut down the world over invisible viruses, locked down schools, tanked the economy, sparked global panic. And somehow, when literal blobs fell from the fucking sky, making everybody violently ill, killing animals, flooding hospitals in a small town, the government just couldn't be fucking bothered. They couldn't be bothered to even lift a finger. Not a task force sent, not a warning to the nation, not a single ounce of concern. And this is not just negligence. This is disrespect. These people weren't hallucinating. They were not exaggerating. They were begging for help. And what did they get? Well, they got silence. Like, their suffering didn't matter because they weren't on a map, weren't loud enough, they weren't rich enough. And that's the part that fucking boils my blood. I can't even find a local news segment about this damn thing. And here's some more shit that's making me angry. You have a town of barely 600 people. Rain falls 6 different times. People get sick. Pets die. Multiple samples sent to multiple labs show conflicting results. Some say the blobs are biological. Some say they're made of human white blood cells. Some say bacteria from the digestive tract. And others say it's nothing. In the medical response to all of that madness, crickets, shrugs, excuses. There was no CDC response and no NIH field team. No environmental hazard crew sent to test the soil. Nothing. Not even a warning. Just a bunch of people coughing in the dark, hoping someone would believe them.
I saw what I think was a eukaryotic cell, which is basically a cell that has a definable nucleus and is found present in biology, in most animals.
Translation? The goo was alive.
Imagine your mom got sick after it rained. Your neighbors are throwing up. Your cats and dogs are dying. And you do everything right. You take samples. You go out and try to talk to the media. You call hospitals. And nobody follows up. What kind of system is that? You know, I'll tell you what kind. It's the kind of system that don't give a damn about small towns, about all-American working class people, about the quiet communities in the woods that they think won't make a fuss about nothing. Because if that shit happened in LA, or if it happened in DC or New York, like where I'm from, it would have been front page news. I'm talking about all around the world. There would be investigative task forces, congressional hearings. But Oakville? Nah. Oakville gets brushed under the rug. And some of the folks who got sick back then, they never healed. Some are gone, perhaps because of the blobs. We'll never know. And the question lingers, if this was you, if this happened in your town, would you still be sitting around waiting for someone to cure? Would you give up just because 31 years passed by? Or would you start asking some real questions? All right, so we've talked about what happened. We've talked about who got sick. Now let's talk about who didn't show up. Because when the sky rains gelatin and your whole town gets sick and animals are dropping dead, you expect someone somewhere in the goddamn government to take notice, right? And you think the CDC would roll through, EPA, shit, maybe even the Air Force, considering what folks were saying that they overheard. But no, the response was silent, and that was for decades. I know it sounds redundant, right? But I'm just trying to stress to you how ridiculous this is. See, in America, we're taught to expect a certain level of accountability because that's what a democracy is supposed to be. We're told we're the ones who won the World War, who rebuilt the world order, who wrote the damn rules about freedom and responsibility. And part of that bargain is when disaster strikes, natural or unnatural, the government is supposed to show the hell up. We pay taxes. We fund this machine. And when we're drowning or coughing or dying, we expect more than silence. We expect action because that's the American promise, right? We all remember Katrina. Bush dropped the ball, and Ye got on TV and said what everyone was thinking.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
At least back then, the failure was visible. At least people showed up, even if they fumbled. More recently, the Biden administration caught heat for dragging its feet on hurricane relief in Florida and North Carolina. Voters used that against them, and rightfully so. But again, there was a response. There was a presence, a press conference, something. Oakville didn't get a knock on the door. Nothing. Not a phone call, not a pamphlet, not a briefing. And that's a fucking insult. That's betrayal. Because when you live in a democracy and your government ghosts you in your hour of need, that ain't just failure. That's contempt. So what do we do when authorities don't investigate? We investigate them. Now let's start with the local angle. In the early days of the event, some county officials reportedly examined the goo, but their statements were inconsistent. One guy says it was harmless, another says it looks organic, but no one kept consistent records. There was no chain of custody, just lost samples, vague memos, and a whole lot of shrug emojis from the people in charge. Now, let's fast forward to the state level. The Washington State Department of Health received samples from Sonny Barcliffe herself. Their results was no threat. Now, let me ask you something. If it wasn't a threat, why did it knock out an entire town? Why did it leave pets and livestock dead, people bedridden, and leave white blood cells with no nuclei floating in a petri dish? You know what that sounds like to me? Sounds like a fucking cleanup job. A little old Washington, D.C. damage control. Now, let's take it to the feds. Did the CDC come out? No. Did the military comment? No. But guess who was flying overhead? According to Oakville residents, military aircraft have been flying unusually low in the area during the weeks before and after the blob incidents. Some believe these were part of some testing operations, and others said it was something far worse. And here's the kicker. The Air Force officially denied ever conducting operations near Oakville during that period. But we've got eyewitnesses, we've got timelines, and we've got sick people. So who's the ones lying? Here's a quote from the Casper Star Tribune on August 20th, 1994. Quote, "We don't know what it is or where it come from," said Mr. Dick Meyer, spokesman for the Federal Aviation Administration in Seattle. "It's a puzzle," end quote. And here's what McCord Air Force Base had to say. Master Sergeant Thaddeus Hosley confirmed that the 354th Fighter Squadron was actively dropping live ordnance off the coast during the exact time period where blobs were falling in Oakville, about 10 to 20 miles west of Ocean Shores. So now you've got explosives in the water, gelatin falling from the sky, and a community of sick people. But the military response, well, they just laughed off every feasible theory. Like, literally, Hosley couldn't even hide his chuckle when asked about them. And let me tell you, they actually added that side note in the article. And when asked directly about what might have caused it, they had nothing. And let's not forget, it was the FAA's Dick Meyer again who had to admit, quote, all commercial plain toilet fluids are dyed blue. And that dismisses the shit theory once and for all, because what fell on Oakville was clear, undyed, and not frozen. Meanwhile, you had citizens like Jim and Kathy Bellinger camping out near the coast, reporting to anyone who would listen that they saw dead crabs, jelly globs on the beach, witnessed folks with strange illnesses, and heard explosions offshore. But still, no action taken. Here's a quote. I thought at first it was a jellyfish, but they didn't look like jellyfish up close, said Kathy Bellinger. End quote. She touched them. Her dog ran through the cluster of globs, and the next day, they both got sick. Now, here's some interesting. Quote unquote, coincidentally, Representatives Jolene, I think it's Unseld, and Norm Dix asked the military to stop bombing off the Washington coast during that period. But not because of the mysterious blobs making people sick, but as they say, to protect salmon runs. Like salmon, not people. You know, this sounds like a classic misdirection. But what it really comes down to is that the very people Oakville citizens voted into office to protect them, to speak for them, outright dismiss what was happening right in their own backyard. That wasn't just neglect. Like I said before, it's betrayal. When your elected officials won't even say your town's name while it's under biological siege, what does that tell you about who they really serve? So let's just be honest. There were people trying to speak up, but the government wasn't trying to hear it.
Maybe we were a biological experiment of some kind, a small one, maybe just get people a little bit sick to find out, say if an enemy did come over here with a biological bomb or something and drop it. Maybe just a test run to see what would happen.
And shall I remind you, this was the early 90s, post-Kennedy assassination, post-Vietnam War, post-MK Ultra exposure. People still trusted the government enough not to panic, but they were starting to ask questions. In a government, they had one job, to protect the public, investigate unknown substances, especially when those substances are falling from the damn sky. I mean, nobody even bothered to question whether or not this was done by an enemy. And let's talk about FOIA requests. In the years since the event, independent journalists and curious citizens have filed Freedom of Information Act requests to try and shake loose anything from the federal government. But almost every request came back with one of three things. 1, no documents found. 2, request denied for national security reasons. That sounds familiar. And 3, redacted pages, the worst of all. Whole paragraphs blacked out like a CIA hit list. If this was a natural phenomenon, why redact anything? If this was nothing, then why hide it? But let me tell you what I think happened. I think the government knows exactly what those blobs were. I think they tested something, biological, chemical, whatever. And Oakville was just lucky enough to be under the clouds that day. I think the moment people started asking questions, the powers that be just shut that shit down. And they've been hoping we'd forget ever since. But we're not forgetting. See, this is why we dig. This is why we pry open old cases, blow dust off forgotten headlines, and say no. We're not letting this one fade into folklore. This isn't just some small town gossip. This is a bioanomaly, a potential act of government negligence, or worse, terrorism. And until someone answers for it, we're keeping the pressure on. So let's ask what everyone's been thinking. Why Oakville? Why 6 times? Why did it only happen when it rained? Why did the blobs contain cells? Maybe human, maybe not. With no nuclei? Why did they make people sick? And the biggest one, why, after all this time, has no one given a straight answer? Could it happen again? Are we even allowed to know if it already has? Because here's the deeper thing. This isn't just about blobs. This is about trust. This is about what a government owes its people. We're living in a country where the food in our grocery stores is banned in Europe, where ingredients linked to cancer and behavioral disorders are sold to us in cereal boxes and soda cans and hot school lunches. Oh, and that school lunch program, that used to be a lifeline. It started as a post-war nutrition effort after it was discovered that young men were being drafted into combat malnourished. It was supposed to nourish the next generation. Now, well, it's just another deal. Another way corporations sell garbage to kids with the government's blessing. Canned cheese sludge, frozen chicken nuggets, pre-packed sugars disguised as meals. Also, food service companies can lock up municipal contracts and turn profit. And we wonder why we're sick. And while we're at it, let's talk about Tuskegee. Let's talk about what it does to a people when their own government experiments on them in secret. And let's talk about COVID, about the debates over lab leaks, the early denials, the gaslighting, and then the quiet walk back years later. You don't have to be paranoid to see the pattern. You just have to have memory. Public health isn't just a medical thing. It's a moral thing. Look up the Broad Street Pump in 1854. A doctor named John Snow, no relation, traced a deadly cholera outbreak to a single contaminated water pump. And when it was removed, the epidemic stopped. That moment changed epidemiology forever. Why? Because someone paid attention. Someone had the courage to say, this isn't right, and follow the evidence. There has to be a point where someone stands up and says, enough. Enough neglect, enough cover up, enough lies. Upton Sinclair did it with The Jungle. One book about filthy meatpacking conditions forced the country to change. And that's the power of truth. That's the power of not shutting up. So if we let Oakville go unsolved, if we shrug and let it slip into urban legend and online weirdness, what does that say about us? What does it say about us as citizens, as neighbors, as a nation that's supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people? Because if they can drop something on a town, watch people get sick, watch animals die, and say nothing, and we don't demand an answer, then we ain't a democracy anymore. We're just customers in someone else's company town. I don't know what fell on Oakville that day, but I do know this. When something falls from the sky and no one can explain it, that ain't just weather. That's a message. From who? From what? Hopefully, we'll find out soon. Well, that's Chamber 1. Until next time, I can't wait to reveal what's behind the door of the second chamber. Hey, if you felt this episode, if it made you curious or angry or just a little bit more open to exploring the unknown, do me a favor. Share this podcast with someone you care about. Send it to your cousin who stays up on Reddit, or your uncle who's heavy on conspiracies and is always looking for new podcasts, or even your homegirl who just never believes in coincidences. Follow me on my socials. Links are in the description. And definitely check out my Substack if you want deeper dives, sources, or behind-the-scenes notes and extra content. I am a writer and a filmmaker, and I have some really cool short stories and essays on my Substack that you will likely love. This is just the beginning. 1 chamber down, 12 more to go. I'm Bambu. Peace out, and I love you.